The Callahan family's peaceful Saturday morning was shattered by an unexpected discovery on their front porch. As Sarah Callahan opened the door to retrieve the morning paper, her eyes fell upon a wicker basket sitting on the welcome mat. Confused, she bent down to examine it more closely. A soft whimper emanated from within, causing Sarah to gasp and take a step back. "Tom!" she called urgently to her husband. "Tom, come quick!" Tom Callahan rushed to the door, still in his bathrobe. "What is it? What's wrong?" Sarah wordlessly pointed at the basket. Tom's eyes widened as he saw the tiny face peering out from beneath a blanket. "Oh my God," he breathed. "Is that a baby?" Sarah nodded, her hand covering her mouth in shock. She knelt down and gently lifted the infant from the basket. It was a newborn, no more than a few days old. The baby girl blinked up at Sarah with dark eyes, her tiny fist grasping at the air. "Who would leave a baby on our doorstep?" Tom asked in disbelief. As Sarah cradled the infant, Tom noticed an envelope tucked into the side of the basket. With trembling fingers, he opened it and unfolded the letter inside. As he read, the color drained from his face. "Tom? What does it say?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with fear. Tom swallowed hard before reading aloud. "To the Callahan family, I'm so sorry to burden you with this, but I have no other choice. This child is in grave danger. Dark forces are after her and will stop at nothing to find her. You are the only ones who can keep her safe. Please, I beg you to protect her. Her life depends on it. Trust no one. They are watching. I wish I could tell you more, but it's too risky. Just know that this child is more important than you can imagine. The fate of many rests in your hands. Guard her with your life. And whatever you do, don't try to find me. It's already too late for me. May God be with you." A chill ran down Sarah's spine as Tom finished reading. She instinctively held the baby closer to her chest. "What on earth does this mean?" she whispered. "What kind of danger could a newborn possibly be in?" Tom shook his head, his brow furrowed with concern. "I don't know. But we need to call the police." "No," Sarah exclaimed, surprising herself with the force of her reaction. "We can't involve the authorities. The letter said to trust no one." "Sarah, be reasonable," Tom argued. "We can't just keep a baby that was abandoned on our doorstep. There are protocols for this kind of thing." Sarah looked down at the infant in her arms, feeling an inexplicable wave of protectiveness wash over her. What if the letter is telling the truth? What if calling the police puts this child in danger? Tom ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "This is insane. We don't even know who left her here or why. For all we know, this could be some kind of scam or setup. Dad? Mom? What's going on?" They turned to see their 16-year-old daughter Lizzie standing in the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Her gaze fell on the baby in Sarah's arms and her jaw dropped. "Is that a baby?" Lizzie asked in disbelief. "Where did it come from?" Tom and Sarah exchanged a look, silently debating how much to reveal. Finally, Tom sighed and gestured for Lizzie to join them. "Someone left this baby on our doorstep," he explained quietly, "along with a very strange letter." Lizzie's eyes widened as Tom summarized the contents of the letter. "Whoa," she breathed. "That's some serious spy movie stuff. What are we going to do?" "We're going to call the police and let them handle this," Tom said firmly. "No," Sarah countered. "We need to think this through before we involve anyone else. The letter specifically warned us not to trust anyone." "Mom, you can't seriously be considering keeping a random baby that showed up on our porch," Lizzie said incredulously. "I'm not saying we should keep her permanently," Sarah clarified, "but until we understand what's really going on here, I think we need to be cautious about who we tell." Tom threw up his hands in exasperation. "This is ridiculous. We are not equipped to deal with this kind of situation. We need to let the proper authorities handle it." "Just give me 24 hours, Sarah pleaded. "One day to try to make sense of this before we involve the police. Please, Tom." Tom looked at his wife's determined face and sighed in resignation. "Fine. One day. But if we haven't figured anything out by this time tomorrow, we're calling the police. Agreed?" Sarah nodded gratefully. "Agreed. Thank you." "So, what do we do now?" Lizzie asked. "First things first, we need supplies for the baby," Sarah said. "Diapers, formula, clothes. Lizzie, can you run to the store and pick up the essentials?" Lizzie nodded, grabbing her keys from the hook by the door. "On it." As Lizzie headed out, Tom turned to his wife with a worried expression. "Sarah, are you sure about this? Taking care of a newborn is a huge responsibility, even temporarily." Sarah gazed, down at the infant in her arms, who had drifted off to sleep. "I know it's crazy, Tom, but something about this feels important, like we were chosen for a reason. I can't explain it, but I feel like we need to protect this child." Tom sighed, wrapping an arm around his wife's shoulders. "I hope you're right, because if not, we could be getting ourselves into a world of trouble." As the day progressed, the Callahan family tried to settle into some semblance of normalcy while caring for their unexpected guest. Lizzie returned from the store with bags full of baby supplies. Sarah showed her how to prepare a bottle of formula and change a diaper, skills she hadn't used since Lizzie was a baby herself. Tom paced restlessly, alternating between helping with the baby and obsessively rereading the mysterious letter, searching for any clues he might have missed. By mid-afternoon, the lack of sleep and stress of the situation were starting to wear on all of them. "We can't just sit here waiting for something to happen," Tom said in frustration. "We need to be proactive about figuring this out." "What do you suggest?" Sarah asked wearily, rocking the fussing infant. "I'm going to take a walk around the neighborhood," Tom decided. "Maybe someone saw something suspicious last night or early this morning. It's worth asking, at least." Sarah nodded in agreement. "Be careful, and don't say too much, just that we're trying to track down a delivery that was made to our house by mistake or something." As Tom headed out, Lizzie settled onto the couch next to her mother. "So, what do you think is really going on here, Mom? Do you actually believe all that stuff about the baby being in danger?" Sarah sighed, gently stroking the baby's cheek. "I don't know what to believe, honestly. It all seems so far-fetched. But at the same time, who would go to all this trouble as some kind of hoax or scam? It doesn't make sense." "Maybe it's like witness protection or something," Lizzie suggested. "You know, the baby's parents were in trouble with bad guys, so they had to give her up to keep her safe." "It's possible," Sarah mused, "but why us? We're not equipped to protect anyone from dark forces or whatever the letter claimed." Lizzie shrugged. "Maybe it was random. Or maybe they knew something about our family that made them think we could handle it." Sarah was quiet for a moment, lost in thought. Then she said softly, "You know, when I was younger, before I met your dad, I worked for a non-profit organization that helped refugees resettle in the U.S. I wonder—" She trailed off, her brow furrowed. Lizzie leaned in eagerly. "You wonder what? Do you think this has something to do with that?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't know. It was so long ago, and I was just a low-level employee. I can't imagine how it could be connected. But it's the only thing in my past that's even remotely related to helping people in danger." Before Lizzie could respond, they heard the front door open as Tom returned from his neighborhood canvass. His grim expression told them he hadn't uncovered any helpful information. "Nothing," he reported with a frustrated sigh. "No one saw or heard anything unusual. It's like this baby just materialized out of thin air on our porch." Sarah's shoulders slumped in disappointment. She had been hoping Tom's inquiries might shed some light on the situation. "So, what now?" Lizzie asked. "We're running out of time before Dad's deadline to call the police." Tom checked his watch. "We've still got about 18 hours. Let's take a step back and approach this logically. Sarah, is there anything else in that letter that might give us a clue? Any odd phrasing or details we overlooked?" Sarah retrieved the letter, scanning it carefully. "Wait a second," she said slowly. "Look at this line. The fate of many rests in your hands. Doesn't that seem like an odd thing to say about one baby? Tom nodded thoughtfully. You're right. It implies this child is connected to something bigger. But what? Lizzie wondered. What could one baby possibly have to do with the fate of many people? They fell into contemplative silence, each lost in their own theories and speculations. The baby began to fuss again, and Sarah automatically moved to prepare another bottle. As she fed the infant, she found herself studying the child's features, searching for any clue to her origins or identity. The baby had olive skin and dark hair, hinting at a possible Middle Eastern or Mediterranean background. Her eyes were a deep brown, almost black. There was something arresting about her gaze, an intensity that seemed beyond her few days of age. As Sarah burped the baby over her shoulder, she noticed something she hadn't seen before, a small birthmark on the back of the infant's neck, partially hidden by wisps of dark hair. It was shaped almost like a crescent moon. "Hey, come look at this," Sarah called to Tom and Lizzie. They gathered around as she gently turned the baby's head to reveal the mark. "Huh," Tom said. "I wonder if that's significant somehow." Lizzie pulled out her phone. "I'm going to see if I can find anything online about birthmarks like that. Maybe it's associated with a particular culture or has some kind of symbolic meaning." As Lizzie tapped away on her phone, Tom's cell suddenly rang, making them all jump. He glanced at the caller ID with a frown. "It's work," he said apologetically. "I should take this. I'll just be a minute." As Tom stepped into the other room to take the call, Sarah and Lizzie exchanged a worried look. With everything going on, they had almost forgotten it was Saturday. Tomorrow was Sunday, and then it would be back to the normal routine of work and school. How were they going to manage caring for a newborn while maintaining their regular schedules and commitments? And more pressingly, what were they going to do when Tom's 24-hour deadline arrived and they still had no answers? Sarah pushed the anxious thoughts aside, focusing instead on the warm weight of the baby in her arms. "One step at a time," she told herself. "We'll figure this out somehow." Tom returned a few minutes later, his expression troubled. "That was my boss," he explained. "There's some kind of emergency with one of our big clients. They need me to come in and deal with it." Sarah's heart sank. "Today? Right now?" Tom nodded grimly. "I'm sorry, but I have to go. This client is too important to ignore." He hesitated, then added, "Maybe this is for the best. While I'm gone, you two can focus on digging deeper into this mystery without me hovering and pushing to call the police." Sarah knew he had a point, but she still felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought of Tom leaving. "Okay," she said reluctantly. "But please be careful. We still don't know what we're dealing with here." Tom kissed her cheek reassuringly. "I'll be fine. It's just a work thing. Totally unrelated to all this. I'll be back as soon as I can." As Tom grabbed his keys and headed out, Lizzie let out a frustrated groan. "Ugh, I'm not finding anything useful about this birthmark online. Just a bunch of superstitions and old wives' tales." Sarah sighed. "Well, it was worth a try. Why don't you take a break? Maybe we should both try to get some rest while the baby's sleeping. We might think more clearly after a nap." Lizzie nodded in agreement, stifling a yawn. The stress and lack of sleep were clearly taking their toll. They settled the baby into a makeshift bassinet, really just a laundry basket lined with blankets, and retreated to their rooms for some much-needed rest. Sarah tried to sleep, but her mind was too active, spinning with questions and theories about the mysterious child that had been thrust into their lives. After tossing and turning for an hour, she gave up and decided to do some research of her own. She pulled out her laptop and began searching for any recent news stories involving missing babies or parents in hiding. Nothing seemed to fit their situation. On a hunch, she broadened her search to include international news, focusing on regions with olive-skinned, dark-haired populations. As she scrolled through articles, one caught her eye. A story about political unrest in a small Middle Eastern country she had never heard of before. The piece mentioned something about a disputed royal succession and rumors of a missing heir. Sarah's pulse quickened as she read, wondering if this could possibly be connected to the baby on her porch. Just then, she heard a cry from the living room. The baby was awake. Sarah closed her laptop and hurried to tend to the infant. As she changed the baby's diaper and prepared another bottle, her mind raced with possibilities. Could this child really be some kind of lost princess? It seemed absurd, like something out of a fairy tale. And yet, Sarah's musings were interrupted by the sound of breaking glass from the front of the house. Her blood ran cold as she heard heavy footsteps and muffled voices. Someone was in the house. Moving as quietly as possible, Sarah scooped up the baby and tiptoed toward Lizzie's room. Her daughter was still sound asleep. Sarah shook her awake urgently. "Lizzie," she whispered, "wake up. Someone's in the house." Lizzie's eyes flew open, instantly alert. "What? Who?" "I don't know," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "But we need to get out of here. Now." They crept toward the back door, Sarah clutching the baby to her chest. Just as they reached it, a figure appeared in the hallway. A man dressed all in black, his face obscured by a mask. "Going somewhere?" he asked in a menacing tone. Sarah's heart pounded as she pushed Lizzie behind her protectively. "Who are you? What do you want?" The man took a step closer. "We want the child. Hand her over and no one gets hurt." "Never," Sarah spat, backing away. The man sighed. "Have it your way." He pulled out a gun, aiming it at Sarah. "Last chance. Give us the baby." Sarah's mind raced, searching for a way out. Just then, she heard a familiar voice call out from the front of the house. "Sarah? Lizzie? Are you okay?" It was Tom. He must have come home early from work. The masked man turned toward the sound, momentarily distracted. Sarah seized the opportunity, shoving past him and running for the front door, Lizzie close behind. They burst out onto the porch, nearly colliding with the startled Tom. "Run!" Sarah yelled, grabbing his arm and pulling him along. They sprinted down the street, the sound of pursuit close behind them. Sarah's lungs burned as she ran, clutching the baby tightly. They rounded a corner and Tom spotted a neighbor getting into his car. "Mike!" Tom called desperately. "We need help." Their neighbor looked up in confusion, taking in their panicked expressions. Without hesitation, he waved them over. "Get in." They piled into Mike's sedan just as their pursuers came into view. Mike peeled away from the curb, tires squealing. "What the hell is going on?" Mike demanded as he drove. "I'll explain later," Tom said breathlessly. "Just drive. Get us out of here." As they sped through the neighborhood, Sarah's mind whirled. The danger in the letter hadn't been an exaggeration. Someone really was after this baby. But why? As Mike's car sped away from their neighborhood, the Callahan family huddled together in stunned silence. The baby, miraculously, remained quiet in Sarah's arms. After a few minutes of aimless driving, Tom finally spoke up. "Mike, I know this is crazy, but we need to go somewhere safe. Somewhere those men won't think to look for us." Mike glanced at them in the rearview mirror, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. "What about the police station?" "No," Sarah and Tom said in unison. Mike raised an eyebrow. "Okay, hospital?" Tom shook his head. "Too obvious. We need somewhere off the grid." He thought for a moment, then said, "I've got it. My uncle has a cabin about 2 hours from here. It's pretty remote. No cell service, no internet. We should be safe there, at least for a little while." Mike nodded, changing course to head out of town. "You want to tell me what's going on now? Who are those guys chasing you?" Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, Mike, we don't really know. It's a long, complicated story that we don't fully understand ourselves." "It has something to do with this baby, doesn't it?" Mike asked, eyeing the infant in Sarah's arms. Sarah nodded reluctantly. "Yes. Someone left her on our doorstep this morning with a letter saying she was in danger. We thought it might be some kind of hoax, but She trailed off, shuddering at the memory of the masked man in their house. Mike was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Finally, he said, "All right. I won't ask any more questions for now. Let's just focus on getting you somewhere safe." The next 2 hours passed in tense silence. Lizzie dozed fitfully in the back seat while Sarah and Tom remained vigilant, watching for any signs of pursuit. The baby woke once, hungry and fussy, but Sarah managed to quiet her with the last bottle of formula they had grabbed during their hasty escape. As they neared their destination, the paved roads gave way to gravel, then to a bumpy dirt track winding through dense forest. Finally, they came upon a small, rustic cabin nestled among the trees. "This is it," Tom announced as Mike pulled up in front of the cabin. "Thank you so much, Mike. We owe you big time." Mike waved off his thanks. "Don't worry about it. You guys are like family. Just be careful, okay? And let me know if there's anything else I can do to help." After saying goodbye to Mike, the Callahans entered the cabin. It was basic but comfortable, with 2 small bedrooms, a living area with a stone fireplace, and a kitchenette. A thick layer of dust covered everything, evidence of how long it had been since anyone had visited. "Okay," Tom said once they had settled in. "We need to take stock of our situation and figure out our next move." Sarah nodded in agreement. "First things first, we need supplies. Food, diapers, formula for the baby. We grabbed some cash before we left, but not much." "I can make a run into town," Lizzie offered. "There's a small general store about 20 minutes back down the road. I noticed it on our way in." Tom hesitated. "I don't know if it's safe for any of us to be out alone." "I'll be careful," Lizzie insisted, "and it makes more sense for me to go. I'm the least likely to be recognized or connected to the baby." After some debate, Tom and Sarah reluctantly agreed. They gave Lizzie a list of essentials and all the cash they had. As she headed out, Sarah turned to Tom with worry etched on her face. "What are we going to do, Tom?" "We can't hide out here forever." Tom sighed heavily. "I know, but at least here we have some time to think and plan without looking over our shoulders constantly." As they talked, Sarah absent-mindedly stroked the baby's hair. Her fingers brushed against the crescent-shaped birthmark on the infant's neck, and suddenly a memory flashed in her mind. "Oh my God," she gasped. "I think I know what this birthmark means." Tom looked at her in surprise. "What? How?" Sarah's mind raced as the pieces started to fall into place. "When I worked for that refugee resettlement organization years ago, I remember hearing about a group of people from a tiny country called Kazakhia. They were fleeing political persecution. The royal family there had a unique genetic trait, a crescent-shaped birthmark." Tom's eyes widened. "Are you saying this baby is Kajatian royalty?" Sarah nodded slowly. "It's possible, and it would explain why someone is so desperate to find her. If she's the heir to the throne, she could be a threat to whoever is in power now." Just then, they heard the sound of a car approaching. Tom tensed, moving to the window to peer out. "It's okay," he said with relief. "It's just Lizzie coming back." But as the car came to a stop in front of the cabin, they realized something was wrong. Lizzie wasn't alone. A man they didn't recognize was in the driver's seat, and Lizzie's face was pale with fear. Tom threw open the door, ready to confront the stranger, but Lizzie called out, "Wait!" "It's okay, Dad. He's here to help." The man stepped out of the car, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Please," he said in accented English. "I mean you no harm. My name is Alexei. I've been searching for the child." Sarah clutched the baby protectively. "Are you the one who left her with us?" Alexei shook his head. "No, but I know who did, and I know why she is in danger. Please, let me explain everything." Tom and Sarah exchanged a wary look. After a moment, Tom nodded. "All right, come inside and tell us what's going on. But I'm warning you, one wrong move and you're out of here." As they settled into the cabin's small living room, Alexei began his tale. He was a member of the Kajatian Royal Guard, sworn to protect the royal family. The baby, he explained, was indeed the heir to the throne, the last surviving member of the royal bloodline. "There was a coup," Alexei said, his voice heavy with emotion. "The king and queen were killed. We barely managed to smuggle the princess out of the country. My partner, Nadia, was tasked with finding a safe place for her. She chose you because of your past work with refugees, Mrs. Callahan. She believed you would understand the gravity of the situation and have the compassion to protect the child." Sarah's mind reeled at this confirmation of her suspicions. But why didn't Nadia stay to explain all this to us? Alexei's expression darkened. "She was being pursued. She left the baby with you and led the attackers away, sacrificing herself to buy us time." A heavy silence fell over the room as they absorbed this information. Finally, Tom spoke up. "So, what happens now?" "We can't keep running forever." Alexei nodded in agreement. "You're right, but we have a plan. There's a group of loyalists working to overthrow the usurpers and restore the rightful rule in Kazakia. With the princess safe, we have a chance to rally support and take back the country." "And where do we fit into this plan?" Sarah asked, gently rocking the sleeping infant. "We need to get the princess to a secure location where she can be protected until it's safe for her to return to Kazakia," Alexei explained. "There's a compound in the mountains of Switzerland where other exiled royals and political refugees are sheltered. If we can get her there, she'll be safe." Lizzie, who had been quiet up until now, spoke up. "So, you want us to smuggle a baby across international borders to a secret compound in Switzerland?" "That's insane." Alexei smiled wryly. "I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but I assure you, it's very real, and it may be our only chance to save not just the princess, but an entire nation." Tom and Sarah exchanged a long look, silently communicating in the way that only couples who have been together for years can do. Finally, Sarah turned to Alexei. "We'll do it," she said firmly. "We'll help you get the princess to safety." Alexei's shoulders sagged in relief. "Thank you. You have no idea how much this means, not just to me, but to all the people of Kazakia." As they began to discuss the details of their plan, Sarah looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms. Just days ago, she had been an ordinary suburban mom. Now she was part of an international conspiracy to protect a royal heir and restore a foreign government. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. But somehow, Sarah knew in her heart that they were doing the right thing. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family. Over the next few days, the Callahans worked with Alexei to prepare for their journey. Using his connections, Alexei arranged for fake passports and travel documents. They mapped out a complex route that would take them through several countries before finally reaching Switzerland, switching modes of transportation frequently to throw off any potential pursuers. As they made their preparations, Sarah and Tom grew increasingly attached to the baby princess. They had taken to calling her Lily, partly as a way to protect her true identity, and partly because the name just seemed to fit her. Lily was a sweet, calm baby most of the time, but she had moments of fierce determination that hinted at the strong leader she might one day become. The night before they were set to leave, Sarah sat by the fireplace cradling Lily in her arms. Tom joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Are we crazy for doing this?" Sarah asked softly. "We're putting our whole family at risk for a baby we barely know and a country we've never even heard of before." Tom was quiet for a moment before responding. "Maybe we are crazy, but I keep thinking, what if it was Lizzie? What if she was in danger and needed someone to protect her? Wouldn't we want someone to step up and help?" Sarah nodded, leaning into her husband's embrace. "You're right. I just hope we're up for whatever's coming next." As dawn broke the next morning, the Callahans loaded into a nondescript van Alexei had procured. With Lizzie and Lily in the back seat, Tom behind the wheel, and Sarah navigating, they set off on the first leg of their journey. Alexei followed behind in a separate car, serving as a lookout and additional protection. The first few days of travel were tense but uneventful. They crossed state lines and made their way to a small private airfield where a pilot Alexei trusted was waiting to fly them across the Atlantic. As they boarded the small plane, Sarah's nerves were on edge. This was the riskiest part of their journey so far. If something went wrong, there would be nowhere to run. But the flight went smoothly, and soon they were landing at another secluded airstrip, this time in rural France. From there, they traveled by car through the French countryside, then into Germany. They stopped frequently, never staying in one place for more than a few hours. It was exhausting and stressful, but they all found reserves of strength they didn't know they had. Lizzie, in particular, impressed her parents with her resilience and quick thinking. She had a knack for soothing Lily when she got fussy, and her youthful appearance helped them blend in as they moved from place to place. As they neared the Swiss border, however, their luck began to run out. They had stopped at a small inn for a few hours of rest when Alexei burst into their room, his face grave. "We've been made," he said urgently. "They're coming. We need to move. Now." They grabbed their meager belongings and rushed to the cars. As they peeled out of the inn's parking lot, Sarah spotted two black SUVs turning onto the road behind them. "They're following us," she called out to Tom, her heart racing. What followed was a harrowing chase through winding mountain roads. Tom's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel as he navigated hairpin turns at breakneck speeds. In the back seat, Lizzie clutched Lily tightly, trying to shield the baby from the jarring movements of the car. Alexei, in the car behind them, did his best to run interference, but their pursuers were gaining ground. Just when it seemed they might be overtaken, Tom spotted a narrow side road half hidden by trees. "Hold on," he shouted, yanking the wheel to the right. They bounced down the rough track, tree branches scraping against the sides of the van. Behind them, they heard the screech of brakes as their pursuers overshot the turn. After several tense minutes of off-road driving, they emerged onto a wider road. There was no sign of the black SUVs behind them. "I think we lost them," Tom said, his voice shaky with adrenaline. They drove on through the night, finally crossing into Switzerland as the sun began to rise. Alexei directed them to a nondescript building on the outskirts of a small mountain town. As they pulled up, a group of serious-looking men in suits emerged. "We made it," Alexei said with palpable relief. "This is the safe house. The princess will be protected here until it's safe for her to return to Kajakia." As they prepared to hand Lily over to her new guardians, Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. In the short time they had been together, this little girl had become a part of their family. Saying goodbye wasn't going to be easy. Alexei sensed their hesitation. "I know this is difficult," he said gently, "but please know that what you've done is truly heroic. You've saved not just a child, but the hope of an entire nation." Sarah nodded, blinking back tears as she placed a gentle kiss on Lily's forehead. "Be safe, little one," she whispered, "and grow up to be the strong leader I know you can be." As they watched Lily being carried into the safe house, Tom wrapped his arms around Sarah and Lizzie. "Let's go home," he said softly. The journey back to the United States was far less eventful than their trip to Switzerland had been. As they settled back into their normal routines, the adventure almost began to feel like a dream. But the experience had changed them all in profound ways. Sarah found herself following news from Eastern Europe with keen interest, always on the lookout for any mention of Kajakia. Tom became more involved in local politics, driven by a new understanding of the importance of standing up for what's right. And Lizzie, inspired by their ordeal, decided to study international relations in college. Years passed. The Callahans never forgot about Lily, but they had no way of knowing what had become of her, or the struggle for Kajakia's future. Then, on a quiet Sunday morning, much like the one when their adventure had begun, Sarah opened the front door to find a letter waiting on the welcome mat. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and began to read. "Dear Callahan family, I hope this letter finds you well. You may not remember me, but you once knew me as Lily. Thanks to your bravery and compassion, I am alive and well. More than that, I am home. Cajakia is free. The usurpers have been overthrown, and I have taken my rightful place as queen. As I work to rebuild my country and heal the wounds of the past, I think often of the family who risked everything to save me when I was at my most vulnerable. You may not have known it at the time, but your action set in motion a chain of events that would change the course of history. You are heroes, not just to me, but to all the people of Cajakia. I would be honored if you would visit my country as my personal guests. There is so much I want to show you, so much I want to thank you for. With eternal gratitude, Queen Liliana of Cajakia. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she finished reading. She called for Tom and Lizzie, her voice choked with emotion. As she shared the letter with them, she felt a sense of wonder and pride wash over her. Their ordinary lives had intersected with something extraordinary, and the ripples of that intersection had changed the world. It was a powerful reminder that even in the darkest times, a simple act of kindness and courage could light the way to a brighter future. As the Callahan family stood together, rereading Queen Liliana's letter, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had been given a rare gift, the chance to see the far-reaching consequences of their actions and know that they had made a real difference in the world. Whatever challenges life might bring in the future, they would face them with the knowledge that they were capable of more than they had ever imagined. They had protected a princess, saved a nation, and in the process discovered the heroes within themselves.